there's been so much debate as to whether it was satirical, whether she intended to perform like this, whether it was a statement around the culture of breaking. The three of us have all very different views on this.
I'm sorry, Raygun fought till the end.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Life Uncut. I'm Laura.
I'm Brittany.
And I'm sore. I'm very sore.
I'm bravo,
Thank
Laura.
you.
Laura
I've been waiting.
She did ask me, she goes, I don't want to bring it in myself, but can you talk me up? Laura did the City to Surf yesterday, Sunday, which is 14 kilometres in Sydney, a very famous run if you're not from this area. And
90,000 people did it yesterday.
it's insane how many people do it.
It
Gives me anxiety.
Yeah, it was crazy. I tried to jog and then there were so many people that I couldn't actually get past them. So then I gave up. But that was only for about maybe 50 metres.
No, for the first kilometre or something, don't you just have to walk with the masses until everyone disperses and the elite athletes go out in front?
And then I was also pushing the donkey pram, which itself weighs about the amount of a child. So I was pushing the pram and I had a toddler in there, which is just all kinds of resistance.
Why is it called donkey?
It's the type of pram.
Oh.
A donkey pram is the one that you can put two children in. So it's a really big pram. And then you can take one seat off and make it smaller.
You're basically pushing a sled for 14 kilometres.
Yeah. Well, no, because a sled doesn't have wheels. So
you had Lola.
I had Lola.
What does she weigh?
I'm not sure.
On a good day.
Don't fat shame my child.
No, I'm just wanting to know what you had to run with.
I don't know, 15 kilos maybe?
Yeah.
Plus also a 6 kilo pram.
Yeah, that's insane. For someone like you that's gone from 0 to 100.
Guys, it has wheels. It moves with you. So when you push it, you're not pushing 20 kilos.
I'm confused as why we're trying to set you up and you're trying to bring it back down. We're trying to make you sound really good and you're like, nah, it was easy.
I am, look, I will take.
Okay, Usain Bolt.
I will take the appreciation, the accolades. I also took the participation award at the end. Yeah, it was great. It was a great day. But I woke up this morning and everything hurts. My hip flexors hurt, my knee hurts, my ass hurts, the back of my legs hurt. I was like, have I done enough now? Surely one time wonder I've done enough exercise to get me through the next couple of weeks.
You mean for 2024?
Yeah. I mean, it's the most I've done in about 5 years. So I feel like I've really just, I like to binge exercise. Some people binge drink, I binge exercise. And then I'll be done now for the next 6 months.
You know what's funny is there are people that do this amount of exercise every single day, but you're like, that's my binge. People run 14 kilometers a day every day, but you're like, I'm done. I binged it. I went hard. That's me done for the year.
But also, I mean, doing it with children was just, it adds a whole other level. It's like an obstacle course when you actually have kids with you because they need to stop, they need to pee, they want water, they want snacks, and you got to get them back in the pram, they want to get out of the pram, they want to walk. It was 14 kilometers of management of children as well.
So how long did it take you then?
3 hours.
That's okay though.
Half the Sunday.
And then you had a sausage sizzle at the end.
Yeah, it was great, guys. Something did happen, which it's not that exciting, but I'll update you anyway. So it's a really long walk, 3 hours. There's portaloos along the walk, and then there's water stations along the walk. But when you have a kid and the lines, I'm talking the portaloo line was 100 people waiting for a portaloo, right? It's a long, long line.
Think of the COVID.
Lola is 3 years old. She doesn't have the bladder retention of someone who can wait in a 100-person deep line. So we're walking along and it was like, Mummy, I need to do a wee-wee. And I was like, okay, we're all right. We'll find somewhere. And she's like, but it's coming out. And I was like, okay.
Oh, no.
We have no spare pants. So I picked her up and I ran her straight to the side of the road and pulled her pants down next to a bush. And then I looked up and there's 5 police officers in a police car just right there and she's peeing in a bush.
She got arrested for public indecency.
Lola's got a criminal record now.
She's in
public
prison.
urination.
She was peeing over a bush in front of the police officers and they all just looked and were like,
We'll let it slide.
what am I going to do? I fucking arrest the 3-year-old or arrest me? Who's getting a ticket for that?
Can you imagine if Lola was like, ma'am, you're going to have to come with us?
But she was butt facing them as well. It was a full bird's eye for these poor police officers. They just turned around and pretended like they didn't see.
I think 3-year-olds get a little bit of leeway.
Yeah.
You were allowed.
Well,
if you went and pulled your pants down
And hovered over the bush.
Discrimination. This is age discrimination.
Ageism.
As this was all happening and they looked at me and I made eye contact with them and they looked at her and her ass is out and she's doing a wee, the only thought that went through my mind was please don't turn into a poo. Do not do a shit, which she's done many times. I was
Because you'd have to pick it up like a dog. You would. You can't leave a dump on the side of the road.
A bush poo.
And Lola's does big dumps.
So she does. Anyway, it was a really eventful day, guys. No poos in bushes. no public indecency fines, but we made it to the end.
Well,
And I got my
congratulations.
sausage sizzle, and that's all that mattered.
I did see that. Congratulations. Very happy for you. I definitely did not do the city to surf. I look at it now and get a little bit of anxiety with how many people are in there. Maybe next year I'll think about it. But the funniest thing happened to me. So I had run into these two guys like multiple times in this one day, and they're just friends, but I know them because I see them so much around, but I don't know them, okay? Like you're like, oh, hey. So I'd seen them at the gym, and then I had seen them later on in the sauna, and then I had seen them at a coffee shop, and then that was in the morning. Then later that afternoon, I saw them at a different coffee shop. And I said, as a joke, as I walked past, I was like, oh, one of us needs to get a job, don't we? And they're like, yeah, laughed, like classic dad joke. Was done with it. And they're very, like, one is a bit smaller and skinny with like not much hair, and one is like quite a big muscly man. So they're really quite standout. And then later on, I was driving up the street and I saw them again, like on the side of the road, walking from behind. So I thought it'd be funny. And I put my window down and yelled out in their face,
Get a job.
Get a job! And I looked at them and it wasn't them. I just looked and abused two strangers. I was like, get a job, you stinkers. Wasn't them.
That's not funny.
And it was so funny, but like in a non-funny way. If something can be not funny, this was it. There wasn't enough time to stop and explain. So I was like, Mom, put the window on my head and just drove off. And that was it. That was what I did. I abused someone and done. What if they just got made redundant?
There's so many variables here about how that could be so inappropriate. But also imagine being the person who Brittany Hockley just wound down the window and screamed.
Like that Kim Kardashian moment.
I hope so much that they recognized you.
So
I hope so much that their group chats right now are Brittany Hockley just abused me.
You know, when you have those moments in life where like you think back to the moment and you still die inside, every time I think about it, I am horrified at myself. But there's no way for me to explain to these people. I will never find them again. And they will die thinking that I think they're lazy fuckers. That was my weekend.
Oh, dear.
So Ben and I were just having this discussion. So I do have a question for you, both of you, Keisha and Laura. Super random. It has nothing to do with anything.
Great.
But I was driving to work this morning, and this is when Ben and I have our most profound conversations. You know how there's that conversation people always say, like, oh, if you could find out when you were going to die, would you? If there was something that said when you turn 18 in life, you could find out exactly when you were going to meet the love of your life, like you were going to meet your person. But you didn't have to. You could tick yes or no. Would you find out? Would you want to know when exactly, like the year, the month you would meet your person?
No, because then you would meet some random dude and you'd be like, well, I guess you're my person because that thing when I turned 18 told me. And
when I was
and
45.
You settled like one day too early and then you ended up marrying fucking Fred. You're like, shit, it's
like, fuck it.
This is all it is. And really you were supposed to marry David, but he was coming 2 days later. I don't know. Or like an hour later. I don't know. I don't want to know. I also want the lessons. I think like as much as the heartbreak sucks and as much as all of the things I've been through in my 20s at the time I would have been like, would love to have skipped this. They were all necessary learnings, as annoying as that sounds.
That's so funny because I was like, oh, I'm going to ask the girls this, but I know what Laura's going to say. She's a control freak. She'll be like, fuck yeah, give me the minute I'm going to meet them.
Never. You only think I'm a control freak because I like to put out a good product when it comes to the podcast. But in every other aspect of life, I am not a control freak.
No, I genuinely just thought if you knew when your person was coming that you'd pick it.
No.
I think it's personality dependent. Like, I've often said that I don't think everyone has to have dated shit people to appreciate good, but I think Laura and I did.
I'm like, fuck me up, Scotty. It's the only way I learn.
I think that was the only way that I realised what a healthy relationship was.
Fuck me and fuck me up, Scotty.
Literally, do some damage. I'm ready. I need therapy. That was my 20s. That was my whole 20s. I was like, how much can you hurt me before I learn the lessons?
And here we are.
I wasn't that deep. I mean, a part of me wishes I didn't have to go through some of those experiences. But maybe I don't know. I mean, I'm the type of person who kind of says like, I think I had to so that I appreciated good, because I really liked the people who, like Laura says, fuck you up, like that give you the highs and the lows, and that taught me to appreciate a good relationship.
Totally. And obviously we can take this in a very serious way. Like there's
it's a hypothetical, guys. You can't tick a box.
No, I know, but there's going to be someone who's listening to that and is like, we speak about so much around like the different kinds of relationships. We talk about domestic violence. I'm not talking about that type of toxic relationship, but I want to put the caveat there because I know that there would be someone who would hear that and be like, well, that doesn't make sense, Laura.
Yes,
I'm talking about, I went through some very toxic relationships that I very much opted into, that I saw the red flags and I ran gleefully into those red flags and
it's like a carnival
and wrapped myself in them.
It's like, Laura, I do not want you, stop coming. And you're like, I'm taking my clothes off. It's coming off.
Literally. He was like, I will probably cheat on you. Here are all of the women that I've cheated on in the past. Here's my ex-wife who I cheated on 10 times. And I was like, I'll be the I'll change him.
Fuck me up, Freddie.
Fuck me up, Scotty.
Fucking whatever.
Do you know what I mean?
No, I would not. I said I would not. There's no way I'd want to know because, well, I mean, for everything that you just said, but like, I think it changes your whole path. I don't think you wouldn't be dating seriously. You wouldn't be wanting, because you have to date seriously to learn what you want, what you don't want. Ben was like, I said, would you want to know? He's like, fuck yeah. And I was like, you'd want to know to the month. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, why? And he's like, because then you could just fuck for 10 years. He's like, could just not. Well, he's like, if you know that they're not going to be your person.
I think it would take a certain element of pressure away, though. You know, if you knew that it was going to happen at a certain time, you'd be like, oh, that's okay. I don't need to worry about like what I'm experiencing. Like if you're an anxious person, it would take away an element of anxiety.
It might do that, but it also would create, because the people that we are based on the experiences we have, right?
True.
They're based on the decisions that we have made throughout our life that have gotten us to point X or point Y or wherever you are in your life. If you could bypass that and you could treat people in a disposable way, knowing that something else was coming along in the future with absolute certainty and clarity, that would create a really fucking horrible person. You know what I mean? That would create a person who hasn't had the responsibility of treating people kind. So I just think, as much as it's a great hypothetical, I would say we would have a world of really, really horrible people who actually weren't very good in relationships because they had not had the practice.
Okay, so the second part of that question, if you could find out now, you could go forward 10 years and see if you're still with your partner. So if you're still with Matt, you're still with Toddler, and I'm still with Ben, would you want to find out or not? You don't get to see why you're not, or why, you know, if you're not, it just says you're not. You don't know what happens in the interim.
I would, because I'm in reproductive years. I would, because I'm in a time of my life that if I was to look into a crystal ball and see 10 years down the future, like my current understanding is that I do want children. If I could look 10 years in the future and it not be with him, I'd rather know now, because then I can make choices that are based off of, you know, a very real biological clock, if that makes sense.
You could still have kids and then have a great life for a decade and then split up.
True. I guess it doesn't tell you when in that 10 years you break up, which does make it a little bit more complex. But if I was to find out that it was, you know, not going to be with him, I would probably look for someone that I could create that family unit with. Does that make sense?
It's deep. And you wouldn't want to know, Laura?
No, I don't want to know. Fuck me up, Scotty.
Fuck me up, Maddie.
No, I don't want to know. I like the not knowing of what's happening in life. I think it's important. I think it's like what makes things exciting. It's what makes things exhilarating. And also the knowing that, I guess it's twofold, when you're in a bad place in life, that things can get instantly better than when things change. And I know that that also then has the flip, but I prefer not knowing about everything.
You like the surprise.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know what my fiance looks like anymore, or feels like. So
that's always a surprise.
It's fresh. Every 6 months, I'm like, oh, that's what you look like. Oh, you're tall.
Brittany's, the other day we were talking and Brittany said, I'm so desperate now. I just messaged Ben and told him to show me his penis. It's all I needed was just to see it on FaceTime flaccid. She's like, I didn't even care.
No,
and he was like, is this what you want? And she was like, yeah, show me it flaccid.
Because okay, Ben just moved to Romania. We haven't spoken about it yet. And he's really upset. He goes, you haven't told everyone I've moved to Romania yet. So Ben's moved to Romania.
I'm really sorry, Ben, because I know that he listens to almost every episode. I'm really sorry that we've talked about your flaccid penis before talking about Romania.
He's going to fucking die.
You know, it's a massive transition. So people obviously don't know. Obviously, he was in Scotland for so long. What has happened? Why is he in Romania?
Well, I'll just scoot past it. Not scoot past it. Sorry, Ben. He moved to Romania, which is where Dracula is from, as a fun fact.
Like Dracula's not real, but
No, but
he's based on a real person, but it's the fiction.
But
His
where
fantasy.
he's from is real, which is Transylvania in
Yeah.
Romania. So he moved to Romania. He's there for a couple of years. So he's been there 1 or 2 weeks. He played his first match last 2 nights ago, which I got up very early for. I'm very proud of him. It's a great move for him. So I'm going to Romania in a couple of weeks when we have our little break. We're having like a little 1 week break. But no, what I was saying is the time difference is different again. So we're trying to work out the time differences now. And we just haven't been able to match up. Ben moving countries has been wild. Like, it's been such a big job because they only get 3 days notice to pack their entire life up. So we'd barely been speaking. So I'm prefacing that because I really want you to understand where I was in that moment. And then we're in bed on FaceTime. He was laying down on the lounge, like he just had a big day. And I was like, babe. He's like, yeah, this is not a sexy chat. We were just watching TV. I was like, show me. I was like, what? I was like, just show me. Just give me a little look. He's like, what? I was like,
Just need a hit.
I was like, he's like, babe, it's not even like that. It's like, and I was like, just show me. And I was like, I just need a little.
He's like, got to peel the sweaty thing off his ball sack and be like, here it is.
I was like, I said, I don't want it sexy. He's like, I just need to see some flaccid dick. He's like, what? I just like flapped it out for a second. And I was like, that was it. That's all I needed.
Topped up.
That was me topped up. That was where he was like, you're a weirdo. And I was like,
I feel like desperate times call for desperate measures.
okay, it's bad over here, babe. I'm like, I'm at a real low point.
Britt, I think you skipped over why Ben moved. Why did he move to
Sorry,
Romania?
Ben. Sorry, I was going to the important points. Ben moved. He got bought by a football team. So he plays for a football team there now, which is awesome. So he signed a contract for a couple of years. I didn't see Romania in my bingo card, but that's where we live now.
So he...
We live in Romania.
I live in Romania.
I am Dracula.
I live in Romania, which I'm so glad that you know the history that Transylvania is actually a real place. You only learned that after telling me it wasn't, and I told you it was.
Yeah.
And then you just spouted that fact as though you knew it. But let's just scoot straight past that. So Ben used to play for Celtics, for anyone who's not familiar, and he's been bought out of his Celtics contract
Yeah.
with a Romanian football team.
Yeah, called Rapid.
Niche.
Rapid.
Rapid.
Fast. They're really fast. Yeah, so he plays for Rapid Romania.
Plays a really fast team now.
They play at 10 p.m. at night because it's 40 degrees there. It's literally too hot for them to play.
Wow.
So he's
That's
gone
annoying.
he has spent 15 years in the UK where it just rains and he's freezing and he's not coping. He's like melting. He's like, it's so hot.
That's so interesting because I would have thought that Dracula lived in a cold place, not a hot place.
Well,
if I was going to, I know he's not real, but if I was going to unpack
Dracula.
the climate around him.
Dracula, I think he thrives in a colder environment, but it does get really cold in the winter there in where he's
What
from.
does he do in summer?
I think he doesn't go out at night. Dracula's a night animal. Isn't that the whole point? A night
It's kind of like a mosquito, isn't he?
he's mosquito.
I don't know
he's-
enough about Dracula.
He's a vampire bat. I don't know how you guys don't know about Dracula. Where the fuck did you grow up?
How many people do you reckon have checked out so far?
This episode's been unhinged. Are you excited to go to Romania? Firstly, have you ever been to Romania before?
No.
Are you excited to go?
Correct.
What are you going to do when you get there?
Get dick. No, I'm going to have fun, tourist. We've got a really short time, but he gets his days free because they play so late at night. Like they don't even train until they start their day at 4 p.m. because it is physically too hot. So we've only got maybe 8 days. Romania is crazily beautiful from what I have seen. So I didn't know anything about it, was never on the top of my tourist list. But I did some Googling when he's like, hey, I think I'm going to move to Romania in 2 days. I was like, Google. It looks incredible. So I think we're just going to be real tourists. Ben hasn't seen much since he's been there because it's too crazy. Like he's just trying to focus on being a good footballer.
When is going to be the first time that you go?
I think in a month. Whenever
September,
we're
yeah.
In about 4 or 5 weeks, I think. Haven't booked flights yet. I'll book in a couple of days. But yeah, that's me, guys.
Well, something I wanted to talk to you about that's happened recently in my life. You guys know, and the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because it came off the back of the recommendation that so many of you has sent us. So last week I was talking about Neil, about my stepdad who passed away. But one of the big parts of that, and something that I had found really hard, was talking to the kids about death. Right? Because we've done it now a couple of times, but they haven't fully understood it. And then even though we have had to have that conversation because, I've lost my grandfather and my nana, having it around Neil, which is their grandfather, felt way more serious. Like it felt like something that was going to be like it was a big conversation for me to work myself up to. So I was talking about it on last Tuesday's episode. So many people recommended this book called The Invisible String. Producer Keisha went and bought the book and I read it and I had to like prep myself up for reading it to the girls.
Oh,
It's
is it
so beautiful.
so? Is it a book on guidance for like an adult to tell a child, or something that a child reads to help them understand?
No, and I wasn't sure what to expect either because it came through. I'm talking like hundreds of people recommended this book, The Invisible String. And I thought it must have just been about death, right? That's what I thought it would have been if that's where the recommendation was coming from. But basically, what it describes is that we're all connected. The people that you love are always connected by an invisible string of love. So when mum goes to work, even though you can't see me, we're still connected by the invisible string. So it's actually not about death at all. It's only one page that even mentions death, but it says, oh, and so, what about Uncle Harry or whoever the uncle is in the book? And he talks about him being in heaven and how we're still connected by the invisible string of love, even though you can't see them anymore.
Aww.
It was really beautiful.
So you read it to them.
You read it to them. It's a storybook. It's a kid's book.
And so do you read it to them and then, sorry, I'm so curious. Do you read it to them for like a little while so it becomes a book and then you tell them about someone that's passed so that they can make the connection?
Well, no. So I had already told the girls, and this is kind of the update I wanted to give you. So I picked the girls up from school that afternoon after we'd finished the podcast, and that was the day that I was going to talk to them. So it was last Monday. I picked the girls up, and I sometimes find that like having serious conversations with them in the car works really well because they're a captured audience, they're in their seats.
Captured audience, you can tell you're a performer.
No, because
They can't leave, literally. Yeah. I locked the audience in there.
No, because little kids are so easily distracted.
Yeah.
And like sometimes when I try and have serious conversations with them, Lola will just walk away, go pick up a block. And I'm like, this is not going well. So she's in her seat. Marley was in her seat, but I wasn't driving. I was just like in the car. And that way I could, give them a hug if they needed it. And I told them, I was like, guys, you know how we've been talking a lot about Far and how Far's really sick. And Marley said, did Far die? So she got it. And she got upset straight away. And then we had a cuddle and we talked about it a little bit more. And then she kind of was like, that's very sad. And then she just moved on to the next thing. So for her, it's been like lots of little conversations. But Lola, who's 3, doesn't quite understand. So we had the conversation and she goes, yeah, Far's in the hospital. And I was like, no, he's not in the hospital anymore. And she goes, oh, is he in India? And I was like, what?
Maybe you just went to India.
Because I just went to India. And I was like, no, sweetheart.
He could be though, Laura.
I was like, he's not in India. And then she goes, right. So he's in Melbourne. And I was like, no, sweetie, he's
rattling
not.
off every city that she knows.
She's rattled off everywhere that I've been to for a work trip. And I was like, no. And she goes, got you. So he's in heaven. Then that's in Melbourne. And I was like, sweetheart. So right now, Far is in Melbourne, according to Lola, and according to Marley, he's in heaven. So they've processed things in their own unique little ways.
But it sounds like Lola almost has it right, like heaven, but over Melbourne.
I think the problem is that Lola thinks that people come back from it. Because like I came back from Melbourne. I came back from India. Whereas like she just thinks that he's just gone somewhere and he'll come back and she'll see him again.
Like heaven's a place like Melbourne, like India.
She can't comprehend the fact that it's like something that's intangible.
Like what do you do? Because she's only 3. It's so young. But did you explain that he's not coming back from Melbourne?
I didn't fixate on the Melbourne part. I explained that he's not there.
It was a one-way.
I haven't gone to that extent. I think she'll start to figure it out and then she'll ask more questions. I don't think, and this is from my experience now, it's not a one-off conversation. It's a conversation that's made up of many small conversations to kind of get them to a place of understanding. And so we've now talked about it lots. Lola still doesn't understand, but Marley absolutely does.
You'll probably find that out of nowhere in a couple of months or something, she'll pop up with something. Like something will come to her mind.
That's what I mean. It's like these micro conversations that you have. But it's so hard to have it because I didn't want to, and I did. Of course I got upset, but I didn't want to get super upset because then I was like, well, are they going to be more traumatized by me crying rather than their lack of comprehension around something that's quite a big thing to grasp? But we had the funeral on Friday this week. And we're going to bring them to the funeral with us, which I am still unsure whether that's the right decision or not, being that they're so little. But I just remember when my great-grandma passed away when I was young and being told I couldn't come and how that I felt really like I wanted to be there, if that makes sense. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm trying to think right now where I heard this. I heard this exact thing on the weekend. Actually, I think it was a It was a podcast. It was a true crime podcast. The man in it said when he was a child, one of his school friends unfortunately passed away, and his parents didn't let him go to the funeral because they thought it will traumatize you. And he has said as an adult he remembers
being not allowed to go.
And that was more traumatizing. I thought that's a weird thing that I've just heard that on the weekend.
Well, that's how I felt about my great-grandmother's funeral. And we were very, very close. And I must have only been the same age as Marley. But I still remember not being allowed to go because collectively I remember all the adults being sad and mourning. And I remember this big thing happened. And I knew that I wasn't going to see her again. But then I felt like I was excluded from their feelings about it. I don't know. I just remember that and I was like, okay, that had an impact on me, so I'll bring the kids and then maybe that will fuck them up in another way. I don't know. Like we're all doing our best here as parents, so we'll see.
Well, also what you just said about how you weren't sure how you wanted them to see you grieving. Maybe that's a factor that your mum, she expected that she wasn't going to be able to control her emotions in that time. And so that maybe that's why she didn't bring you along to the funeral.
Yeah, totally. But I don't know. And maybe it's because we are this self-help generation. I don't know if it's a bad thing that kids see their parents get upset. Like, so long as it's not that you're going to your children for comfort to make you feel better. But I think it's okay that kids understand that parents have complex feelings as well.
I think it depends on the reason. I think it depends on why you're upset because I think that makes a big difference. But in terms of the funeral and if you should take them or not, I think that also depends on what kind of a funeral. Like, is it an open casket? Is it just more of a goodbye? I think the open casket
it's not an open casket.
Yeah, but for example, I think that's where you'd be like, that is not a memory they should probably have or something they should see. But I think the idea of everyone that you know, like as a 5-year-old, like all these important people to you, saying goodbye to someone that was important to them, and it's a ceremony of love and, you know, in a way happiness, celebrating someone's life. Maybe that isn't the worst thing. And I'm not a child psychologist, I don't know, but maybe it's not a bad thing for them to have some closure and understand that this is us saying goodbye. You know, he's not coming back, and I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, once again, I know
You've got 5 days to find out.
I said it last time. I was like, child psychologist. There were so many of them that slid into the DMs around how to speak to kids. And I'm so appreciative. Like, genuinely, everyone who recommended the book or recommended how they've had these conversations with their kids, I'm so grateful. But yeah, I don't know if there is a perfect way to do this stuff. It's been a big parental learning curve this last week. We are talking about the thing that everybody is talking about at the moment. The thing that if you open Instagram and you go to explore page, you open a reel, you cannot escape it because she's gone from being an Olympic failure to being a social media phenomenon. And that is Raygun.
Raygun.
She's Breaker.
Dr.
Raygun.
One and only Raygun.
Dr. Raygun.
Okay, even she is such a phenomenon that Adele just stopped her concert in the middle to talk about it, to mention her by name. I'm sorry. I would do anything to have Adele stop a concert and say my name.
Even if it was kind of to
The
mock
kangaroo,
you.
I'd do it.
It was like, so Adele stopped her concert to like on one hand be like, hey, this happened. This poor woman's getting so much trolling, but also go and watch it and laugh. So
She
really
haven't. Yeah, she's like the best thing that's ever been at the Olympics. Like, I love it. I'm so obsessed with it. It's amazing. And then the backhand of that was like, also, if you haven't seen it, go Google it. Lol.
So to set this up, in case you are the one person in Australia who hasn't seen this yet, don't worry. We're not going to victimize you. It's okay. You can join the group. We can all giggle about this together. Raygun, she's an Australian. She's a PhD graduate, so Dr. Raygun. But she also recently went to the Olympics. She competed in the breaking, which is the very first time the Olympics has ever had breaking as an Olympic sport this year in Paris.
And the next Olympics have already cancelled it.
Yeah, it's unfortunately it was a one-hit wonder. But the thing is, and I mean, there's been so much debate as to whether it was satirical, whether she intended to perform like this, whether it was a statement around the culture of breaking. But ultimately, the dance that she performed scored her 0. She came absolutely dead last. And the media sort of frenzy around this now has been because some people are saying that it's an embarrassment that she even made it to the Olympics. But at the same time, there's been almost this tide shift where now people are calling her the Queen of Australia for just getting out there and giving it a red hot crack. The three of us have all very different views on this because I think it begs to question now whether she is at the bottom of a pylon, whether this is bullying, whether this is trolling, or whether this is the response one should expect for doing such a terrible performance at the absolute elite, the top of the food chain when it comes to sport, and that is the Olympics.
To add a little bit of like context as to who she is and what she thought of her own performance. Earlier in the day, she was interviewed and she was quoted saying, "Don't be afraid to be different. Go out there and represent yourself. You never know what's going to take you. All of my moves are original. I was never going to beat these girls on what they do best, the dynamic and the power moves, so I wanted to move differently, be artistic and creative, because how many chances do you get in a lifetime to do that on an international stage?"
She went through 3 rounds and she got 0 points. Like, so she didn't even get 1 point in the 3 rounds from like 5 judges.
You'd be Devo.
So overall, in the breaking community, they have said that the performance wasn't up to scratch, which is what matters. They're at the Olympics in your chosen sport. You have the judges that are supposed to be experts in their chosen sport. They've decided to give you 0. That's not disputable for me. Like, I don't know breaking and I watched it and I was like, that is not a great performance. It is not a great performance for breaking.
The thing is, though, is like you don't have to be an expert on breaking to watch it and think that it was an objectively bad performance, which is a horrible thing to say. I know, and I know that that's really mean, and we will get into the conversation around the pylon and the trolling and everything else. But I think the reason why this has happened is because people who have no literacy in breaking whatsoever all watched that and everyone kind of chuckled because they were like, well, I don't think that this was meant to be entertaining for the reasons that it was entertaining.
Well, the end of my statement was, I love her. I love her for that. The performance I can recognize was not up to Olympic quality, but I think she was fucking awesome. And I take my hat off to her as a 36-year-old woman that is in a breaking community that isn't probably a huge community anyway and doesn't have a lot of women, that went out there and owned her own creativity for whatever reason. She knew she wasn't going to compare to the others. She said that. She was like, I'm 36. I don't have the strength and the agility and the stamina or whatever it was. She's like, I don't have the power moves that the younger people have. So she's like, I know that. So what can I do that is a point of difference? So she said they were all original moves, which I think were evident. Original moves that were creative, and she called it her art. And I think I take my hat off to her. I was like, you took an opportunity and you absolutely ran with it. But I don't like, personally, how many people are trolling her. And that's because this isn't just like an Australian thing. The entire world, and that is not an exaggeration. She is currently the most talked about person or thing in the world. And some of it's good and supportive, but most of it is really shitty. And I always just try and think, put yourself in that person's position.
I have flipped around on my perspective on this performance.
You flipped around on your back. That's what we saw.
I did do the V-sits. I initially thought, overarchingly, and I am someone who deeply loves sport. I love going and watching it. I love the kind of the determination that it takes for athletes to become what they are. I initially thought sport is designed to be entertainment, and this is one of the most entertaining things I have ever seen. And I don't think that there's anyone who could say any different. You know, the virality of this performance is there for a reason. It was very entertaining for whatever emotion that invoked in you. But the counter argument to, I guess the criticism of her and her performance, and maybe criticism rather than trolling, here are a couple of things. She was selected to represent our country. She used taxpayer money to fund the trip, and that includes her partner as well. So, like, all of that is paid for by the taxpayer. So
that sounds the way that you word that sounds super negative. Every athlete went is taxpayer. You can't just say that she went and used it like she was trying to scam the citizens of the good citizens of Australia.
Yeah, it is like the real scaremongering of people who are like, the purity of the Olympics. She used taxpayer money to go and do the sprinkler.
If she won gold, we would have been like, yeah, we got her there. We paid.
Yeah, 100%. And also they would get a payment if they won a medal.
Yeah, like $20.
But there aren't participation awards when you go to the Olympics. Like, this isn't your Year 5 athletics carnival where you get a participation clap. And the rhetoric of, well, she did her best. I personally don't think she did her best is suited to a competition of this particular level.
I disagree.
I mean, she did get up there and choose to do moves like the kangaroo and the sprinkler.
Iconic.
And she contributed to, we may get into this. There is a lot of criticism about whether breaking should be included as an Olympic sport to begin with. And in my opinion, you can't say that you're going to push back on that criticism of the legitimacy of a particular sport and then get up and do a sprinkler.
Hear me out. Every single person that goes to the Olympics cannot win. They cannot place. They cannot all make it. Some of them won't get through the qualifying rounds. What you have to do is be the best in your country to go. Whether you want to argue the point tooth and nail and say she wasn't good enough to go, she was for us and our country.
Which doesn't say a lot about the female breaking community in Australia if she was the number one. Which, fine, iconic.
Yep.
I'm not, as much as I am having a dig, I'm also saying, like, if that is the competition, if she is number one in our country, she has every right to be there and to compete. It just means that it is a sport that we are not good enough in comparison to the rest of the world. We are not where we need to be able to be at an Olympic level.
Yes. Now listen to this. This is my counter argument to what Keisha just said, where she's like, should you be getting a participation award when you go there? I did some Googling. What is the spirit of the Olympics? Quote, the Olympic spirit is best expressed in the Olympic creed. The most important thing in the Olympic Games is not to win, but to take part, just as the most important thing in life is not to triumph, but the struggle. The essential thing is not to have conquered, but to have fought well. I'm sorry, Raygun fought till the end.
Yes, okay.
She fought and she tried her best, and I take my hat off to her. I think if she got the chance to go to the Olympics, if she was the best, she knew she wasn't going to win. She was like, yeah, I'm patriotic. I want to put the green and gold on. I want to represent.
I don't disagree with you. I think that maybe that's an oversimplification of what the Olympics stands for the athletes themselves. I would say that the people who have gone there, this is like their lives. Like this is their absolute passion. This is what has, and you know, I guess
Raygun's life.
This can be said for Raygun. I mean, her PhD is in breaking. Like she has obviously dedicated a very big part of her life to breaking. But I think the reason why some people are getting so angry, well, not even angry, it's so stupid. Why are we all getting so angry about breakdancing when like 3 weeks ago no one gave a fuck about breaking? You know what I mean? Majority of Australians didn't. The people who did obviously cared. But the outraged community isn't the breaking community. It's everyone else who thinks it's such an injustice that we were embarrassed at the Olympics. And that to me is funny. Like, I think if you're that mad about it, but you didn't care about breaking 3 weeks ago, you need to go and touch grass because it truly doesn't affect you and it's not going to affect you in a couple of years' time. But I think a lot of people have the argument of the sacrifices that a lot of Olympians need to make and like what it means for some Olympians to be there and how their entire lives and dedication around being an elite athlete versus going there and just giving it a red hot crack. Like that's such worlds apart. Like the Olympics isn't supposed to be about going and just doing your best. It's supposed to be, yes.
It's doing your best to win, but it's still doing your best.
But it's also supposed to be doing your best and being the best amongst elite athletes. And then it just goes back to this whole debate around, well, obviously in Australia, we don't have the same criteria and the same skills and expertise as other countries do. The thing that I find the funniest about this is that there were amazing breakers in this competition. So Amy Yuasa, she's from Japan, she won. I would guarantee that no one, I reckon maybe a handful of you know that she won the actual breaking competition. The woman who came second was from Lithuania. They were incredible, but their performances have been completely outshone by the person who came last.
Well,
and that's so disappointing for them.
But this is where it gets interesting and the conversation gets a little bit deeper and a little bit more serious. It's not that the Australian breaking community isn't elite or isn't big. There are plenty of people that are wonderful and incredibly talented breakers in Australia, but it goes into a deeper cultural level. A lot of the breaking community didn't want breaking to be an Olympic sport. Like,
yeah, interesting you say that because last night I did a very big deep dive. As you mentioned, Laura, Raygun, is an academic. She teaches at the Macquarie University and she has published articles on this. And I just want to try and make this distinction clear. When you publish a scientific article, like a peer-reviewed article or a paper, those terms are kind of used interchangeably. That doesn't just mean that you write something and that you send it to an editor and it gets posted. It's not like news.com. It's not like Daily Mail. These things go through other academics. They are reviewed and they are, it's actually quite expensive to do this type of research. And personally, I felt as though I took a really different turn once I learnt this information. I initially was like, this is so entertaining. This is so great. She got the whole world talking about this sport. Genius. This is her area of research. incredible. She's literally done something that has achieved the purpose of getting this sport out to the world.
Yeah, but and saying that, I don't know if people from the breaking community would love that the reason why it's on a stage and a world platform
Is
and
a
being
mockery.
spoken about is because people are laughing at it.
This is where things got much more interesting to me. So 2 particular papers, that one was published in June 2023, that was called The Australian Breaking Scene and the Olympic Games, The Possibilities and Politics of Sportification. There is another paper that she is the main author of called The Ethics of Living a Double Life, Rethinking Ownership, Authenticity and Identity in Hip Hop Culture. Now, she's the main author of both of those papers. So other people have contributed, but she's the main person who's put that research together. That paper specifically says, in this article, we examine how Australian breakers have responded to and made sense of breaking becoming an Olympic sport. We have identified 3 key themes that underscore these responses. They are legitimacy, culture, and agency. And the 2 that I'd like to focus on are legitimacy and culture. So the culture of breaking originated in the Bronx. It was predominantly by people of color, of African American descent, or Puerto Rican kids. It was by marginalized groups to foster a sense of community. And so a lot of the breaking community, this underground world, that's where breaking started. And it was kind of a place for them to have a way to express themselves, to resolve conflict, that kind of thing. They have expressed in her own research that they don't think that it becoming an Olympic sport gives respect to the cultural significance of the dance style.
Well, because it also commercializes it. That was the big debate around this, was that by becoming an Olympic sport, it takes away the cultural essence of what, and because it's not a sport, of the expression and how it originated.
Yeah, it sanitizes it, right? If you attach a commercial element to it, you kind of take away the point of why this was created to begin with. Another thing that she said in the second paper that I mentioned was that as an Australian white woman, she feels excluded from the breaking community. Her actual words were this: ethics of who can access and transverse hip-hop's hierarchies of authority. In that, they discussed the cultural importance of breaking, where it came from, and my opinion of that research was that she felt as though she was excluded from the higher respect levels of the breaking community, specifically because she was white, she was Australian, and she was female.
I find that interesting because I have some friends that are huge in the breaking community.
It's so random to me, Britt. You're like,
I know a lot of people. So he was a friend at school, a bit older than me. So I'm talking a long time. 20 years ago, he's been doing this. He's Australian. And then he got married and had kids. He's a bit older than me now. And the kids are huge in the breaking community. They travel to competitions and they are, one's a girl, one's a boy, and they are half Australian, half Hawaiian. But they have been wholeheartedly accepted and embraced by the breaking community of all ethnicities, like all around the world. So I find that I do find that an interesting point, just off like what I have seen.
Yeah, and that is my perspective of her research. She also did include the contrast of these perspectives as well. So she included the fact that a lot of the people in the breaking community were excited about it becoming a part of the Olympics. But I just don't know if you can be the most researched person on the planet in this field, examine people's concerns over the legitimacy and the cultural aspect of breaking, and then take those concerns and get out there, do the sprinkler and the kangaroo. To me, it just isn't congruent. It doesn't seem to make sense to me that you would be respecting those people's criticisms, doing research on it, publishing the research, and then going out and doing that type of performance.
I get that, but that's my point. She is so aware of it. So this would have been a very considered decision, and there are just as many people in the breaking community that wanted this to be included for the right reasons and for awareness as there were people that didn't want it to be included. In terms of the culture, I completely agree, but I think what we saw her try to do is bring her culture into it. In a way, I think that's her trying to show the respect to, like, I get that this dance is layered with culture and history, and I'm thinking that she was making a really conscious effort to be patriotic and bring her culture into that. We have to take into consideration that this woman has dedicated her life to the study, so has to have made a decision based on that. Whether it was the right one or not is not for us to judge, but it's different to someone that just came off the street to do it. Like, you have to consider the fact that she has dedicated years upon years of studying nothing but the breaking community.
As much as there's been so many memes, because we love to memify things in Australia, that have come off the back of this, there has been a much more serious conversation that's come to light in the last couple of days. And I also think it's the reason why the feelings around Raygun have shifted, especially in Australian media. Australia's chef de mission in Paris, her name is Anna Mears, she came out and gave a statement around the backlash that Raygun was receiving. And this really had to do with the sexism and misogyny that she sees is loaded into the criticism that Raygun is receiving. This is what she had to say.
If you don't know Rachel's story, in 2008, she was locked in a room crying, being involved in a male-dominated sport as the only woman, and it took great courage for her to continue on and fight for her opportunity to participate in a sport that she loved, and that got her to winning the Olympic qualifying event to be here in Paris. She is the best breakdancer female that we have for Australia.
She also went on to say, now you look at the history of what we have had as women athletes and what we have faced in terms of criticism, belittlement, judgment, and simple comments like they shouldn't be here. I really thought about this because I was like, I don't know how I feel about this statement, only because I would understand if the overall caliber of the female competitors was the same as Raygun and people were saying, okay, well, this is embarrassing. But I think it almost belittles the entire competition because there were incredible female breakers in that who were not limited by their ability or access to the sports. Maybe the culture within Australia is very different and it has been limiting for Raygun. I'm not a breaker. I do not know what it is like to be a female in that sport in this country. The only thing about this that I kind of was like, I don't know if I agree with it, and then it kind of sits a bit weird for me, is this idea that feels a little bit like false victimhood. And there's been a lot of media outlets that have been comparing Raygun to Eric the Eel. Now, you guys might remember Eric the Eel, who is iconic. So at the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, Eric the Eel swam the 100-meter race. He set a time and it was something crazy. It was 100 meters, but he set the slowest time on record, which was 1 minute and 52 seconds. But the reason why this is iconic is because he also won his heat in that race. So the reason why I think this is very, very different is because this was a special heat that was put together for athletes who were unable to access training facilities because of being impoverished or disadvantaged. So he came from the Equatorial Guinea. He had never seen a 50-meter pool prior to rocking up at the Olympics. He had trained only in the only 20-meter pool that existed in the country. And he learned to swim in a creek that also had crocodiles in it. So I don't think it's
That'd
fair.
make you swim quick, to be fair.
Not comparable, are they?
It's unbelievable that he even had the capacity to learn to swim, let alone the rags to riches story about how he made it to the Olympics. It was, and I remember watching the race.
Same.
Every single person in the Aquatic Centre in the Homebush Olympics was screaming. They were up cheering for him. The other two people in his race were disqualified, and that's because they both did a false start before the gun or, before the timer started. Yeah. And the other two people that were in that race were Karim Bear from Nigeria and Fakud Oripov, who's from Tajikistan. So it was a completely different race. And that's why when I was seeing these comparisons being drawn, I was like, I think that's a really tough thing that we are doing because I don't think that she is a victim. I don't think that Raygun is oppressed. I don't think that she has come from a minority beyond, yes, maybe being the small female population, but I don't think that we can draw the same parallels because one person is and has been far more severely disadvantaged and that's why the world got behind them. I don't think it was because of sex. And that's really important. I don't think it's because one's female, one's male.
On the other side of that, I agree that women have had it hard in sport. We know that. Like, that is a fact. We have struggled and we don't get paid the same and we are ridiculed. And that is the history of women in sport. I made a comparison also to Eric the Eel, but I did it in a different way. I'm not doing it in the sense of, and I said it to you too, I didn't do it in the sense of victimhood, look where they've come from. I did it in the sense of, I think Keisha maybe made the comment where she said she shouldn't be there, she's not good enough. And I said, well, she is good enough because she was the best in her country, like Eric the Eel. We all know Eric the Eel was never going to go and win that race, like win the Olympics.
Yeah.
But you cannot deny the fact that he was the best in his country, and that's what the Olympics are. If you can compete to be the best in your country, you don't have to be the best in the world. This is what the Olympics is weeding out. But if you make the best in your country, for whatever reason, I think you should be allowed to go and have your chance. Raygun did not hurt a soul. She went out there and had the fucking time of her life. It is a dream for her. She wore the green and gold. She was patriotic. She's dedicated her life to this. She was like, why wouldn't I take the chance to represent my country? And for that, I just think, well done.
I think that's a very interesting point you said, because one of the other criticisms that people on the internet are having is that she's taken this opportunity away from someone else, right? So someone else might have had a dream of going and representing Australia in the breaking for the first time it's ever been included in the Olympics, and she took that opportunity from them.
But she didn't, because she competed in a trial. I don't know.
Yeah, where were they?
That's kind of what I mean. Like, I think that is not a fair criticism, but I am intrigued as to whether you think the amount of trolling, the type of trolling, and the type of commentary about it, or even criticism, do you think that's gendered?
I think it is very, very challenging to put a number on it. I know that she's experienced criticism for lots of things, not just her performance, but also the choice that she made to wear the Australian tracksuit. I think Australia did her dirty. Like, she looked like she was wearing a lawn bowls outfit, or she was going to play cricket. Like, I understand why the outfit didn't fit the type of wear that I think most people in the breaking community would normally wear.
It did give cricket.
It
gave
really
cricket.
exuded
Like T20.
It really exuded cricket or lawn bowls. But the problem with that is I also understand the patriotism of her still wanting to choose to wear it. So that is almost, once again, the Australian Olympic organisers not understanding the sport of which they've put athletes into.
Yeah, but we had our male breaker, Jay Attack, who competed also, who also wore the Olympic getup. Like, he chose to wear that, because some of them wore streetwear, but he also chose to wear it. And no one trolled him.
So I
it's
think
different. It doesn't have a collar. It doesn't look as, I'm going to say, I'm so sorry. I know that this sounds horrible because I pointed out a lot of the criticisms. It looks really nerdy. It doesn't look street-like. It doesn't look underground.
There for fashion.
I totally understand that, but I think it is important, because people are going to draw this comparison. They're going to say, he didn't receive feedback, she did. The thing that I think makes that outfit look daggier is the fact that it is a collared shirt, which really does pertain to sort of like a lawn bowls or like a cricket, like we've said. His outfit, even though it's the Australian one, it's a different type of uniform. And I think the big question is what you asked, Keish, is like, does the trolling come back to being gendered? And it's almost too hard to tell. I think a lot of the love and now the adoration and she's the queen is also because it's gendered. And I think of people like Stephen Bradbury. At least he made it to the final, right? He was in the final race. So he was still one of the top 10 in his sport. Yes, he won when he was like coming last because everyone fell over. But that's been a meme that's been running for 20 years. So I'm like, he received that criticism unrelenting. People still use it as a reference for like pipping someone to the end as a win, you know? So I don't know if we can bring gender into this, and I might get absolutely flamed for that, because I think a lot of media at the moment is saying that this is very, very gendered. And I would say often I'm the person in this podcast that points out the gender discrimination or the gender indifference. But I think in this instance, we are comparing females with females. We're comparing women against women. It was a woman's competition in sport, and she was at the bottom against all the other incredible female athletes. And so I don't know if in that instance, in the Olympics as a whole, we can say that the criticism that she's receiving is gendered. I think it's based on a reflection of who she was competing against.
Yeah, and this is a role reversal for you and I, Laura, but I think a lot of it has to do with gender for sure. When we won't know, but I don't believe
What makes you think that?
I just don't believe that if a male did that, the reaction would be the same. I think it would be like, what a fucking legend. Like, just fucking owned it. Like, you know,
a bit more larrikin culture, you mean?
Yeah, I do. I
Potentially.
think it has a lot to do with age, sex,
Yeah.
and very obviously her performance. Like, her performance was subpar, but I don't believe that ridicule in the pylon would have been as much if it was, say, a 20-year-old male that did the performance. That's just me. Like, at the end of the day, the majority of it is the performance. We can say that. But I think it would be remiss of us to say it has nothing to do with ageism and sexism in a smaller capacity. My favourite part of this, to be honest, is, and I take my hat off to her, but is her response, because I can't be sure that I would have the same response if the world was ridiculing me and mocking me for something that if I went out and thought I gave my best for something, like, I actually feel really sad for her. If I thought I had performed to the best that I could and the world was mocking me. The Adeles of the world. Like, there is no one that doesn't
The
know. Keishas of the world. But
Mate, I
she-
got carpet burn. Some of those moves were harder than I expected.
I feel like I would go into hiding, but I love that she just owned it and she said, guys, don't be afraid to be different. I'm me. I made it my own and that's what I'm doing. Like, she just came out and owned it and that cannot have been easy.
Yeah, I agree with this. And I think that that is the reason why the conversation around her has shifted so greatly. I think it's her ability to be self-deprecating, doing the skit with the inspired unemployed, like leaning into that. That is what I think Australians love to see. It's like, you can make fun of yourself, you're an icon. You're not taking this too seriously, you're an icon. And everything that she's done so far, as much as I think people have very much and were very harsh in ridiculing her around her performance, people in general are now rallying around her. Like, I've seen everyone from Mamma Mia to Pedestrian to like Fashion Critical. Everyone is calling her an icon now. And it's because of her reaction to this criticism. And I think that that is something that's probably way more aspirational than her actual performance themselves. But I would love to see, because I think that like every wedding, every 21st, there's going to be someone
Those
now
moves.
doing the fucking like kangaroo hop.
No,
or
the sprinkler one.
Well, we're already doing that, but we're going to do it with a bit of Raygun flair now.
I might go as her for Halloween.
Keisha.
To be fair, I actually do tip my hat to her because I had no idea about the history. Like you said, Laura, I had no idea about any of this stuff. I didn't know about the cultural impacts of it, and now I do.
Sorry,
so if that's something that she has created for the world, well done.
That is how you know you have made it. If somebody can dress up as you for Halloween and just rock up to a party and everyone knows who you are, then you've made it. Well, it's time for Accidentally Unfiltered. Last night, my partner and I were getting it on. And for context, he always jokes that I don't like getting on top, and I never do it. So, lo and behold, I jumped on top. I was doing my thing when he raises his hand up.
Like he
Open
has a question.
palm. Yeah, like open palm.
Excuse me, miss, I have a question.
I think he's impressed with me going on top and having a good time and think he's throwing out a high five. So I give him a high five back. He looks at me confused. Turns out he was going for a little titty slap, and instead I high-fived him and completely ruined the mood.
Who slaps a titty?
Heaps of people give a little titty thing.
What?
Like it's
Slap or a
like
grab?
that.
Yeah, but you don't hold your hand up long enough to smack your titty. Like, how could you confuse a little like grab or something? I'm sorry, that's on him.
I think she was enthusiastic. I think they were both too enthusiastic in this moment.
If I was on top and he went and high-fived my tit, like tit punched me with an open hand, I would also be confused.
I'm confused about the angle.
That's what I
Because
mean.
A high five is a much higher like shoulder angle
No,
than
because
what.
he's laying down and she's on top, so he would have gone like this. He's on his back. He would have lifted his hand. He's not bringing it up in the air.
I have never ever in my life been on top and had someone open palm slap my tit.
I've needed someone to hold it like support.
So they stop bouncing around, smacking you in the face.
You should knock someone out, so they have to hold a
being
boot.
concerned.
I
yeah.
remember the only time that I have like vivid memories of high-fiving someone after sex was Matt. And I'm convinced it was when I got pregnant. I high-fived him after Lola because I was like,
Just a good orgasm.
I was like, that's how you make a baby. No, we were trying to make a baby. And then we high-fived. And I'm pretty certain that that was the time that we made Lola.
I've
And
high-fived.
that's how you make a baby.
yeah, I've
poetic.
high-fived Ben.
Thank you.
With fist pumped, like pumped then fist pumped.
Over how good the sex was.
Yeah,
Like,
over
well
like
done.
when
We
you-
did good.
When you just nail it, like sometimes it's just like perfection.
That's how I felt after the City to Surf. I high-fived Matt after that. I was
Yeah,
like, well
very
done.
similar,
Fucking
very similar.
good job. Well done. Suck and sweet. What's your suck for the week?
my suck for the week, and it is a big update that you've all been waiting for. Delilah is officially kicked out of her dog school.
So-
it happened. The probation period is over, and she did not make the
What
cut.
happened? Wait, I need to know.
She doesn't know how to ride in the car.
What
with
did
other
Jody say?
dogs. She doesn't ride in the car with other dogs very well.
No,
Yeah.
she's a menace.
That's literally it. I did also see video evidence. It was not good. So she's out. She's out.
That's
It's a sa-
really sad.
It was. And Jody messaged me. She was really sad. She's like, I feel like it's a breakup. And I was like, it is a breakup. I was like, we've all three of us have been together for like 3 years now.
You dumped me, Jody.
Um,
Jody is Brit's dog walker. She
One
doesn't-
of them.
She doesn't take Brit
She
for a
also
walk.
walks Brit on a lead.
Jody's Brit's walker. She puts a studded collar on her, takes down the street.
You
Picks
are
up a
gimp.
shit.
She's Brit's gimp.
No, Jodie's she's been amazing, and this is not on Jodie at all. It's on
No,
Delilah.
it's on Delilah.
It's too much to obviously manage, and I have been trying to work on it. Now, people might know this and be able to help me, but it has gotten worse. She's been with it for 3 years. Delilah's just turned 3. So she's been with it for 2 and a bit years, sorry. Delilah's just turned 3, and it has gotten worse in the last 6 months. It's almost like Delilah's going into a regression. So
Delilah's a teenager now. She's
I'd love to know if this is an actual, because they do have a regression at like 1.5. So I'm wondering if there's another 1 now, because it's just happening out of the blue. So that's my suck. I genuinely was upset. Like, I felt like a parent whose child was like running out of control and that she couldn't control it. That's how I felt. And I was embarrassed. I was like, I'm so sorry for her behavior.
humiliated.
I was humiliated in front of all of the dog school because now everyone's like, where's Delilah?
Like, she's so naughty she got kicked out.
Yeah, so it was a really sad day. So it's hard. It's been really hard for me.
Okay, what's your sweet?
My sweet for the week was I decided on a wedding planner. So we've officially got the wedding planner in, and they have locked in some venues for us to look at. And I just feel like immediately a weight taken off my shoulder. Laura and I were having a joke the other day because you guys might remember when Laura got her initial wedding planner and they were a scammer. She's scared. She was a scammer.
I've forgotten about this.
I probably haven't told you guys. I can't even remember if I told you the whole story or not, because I think at the time
It's traumatizing.
it was still happening. It was like
I think they were still involved with actual plans, and you wanted them to come
your
to
money back.
fruition.
yeah, well, I couldn't tell what was happening because I think she was still in business. But yeah, we booked a
Let's save it. Let's
We
do it on Tuesday. Let's unpack
booked a
it.
wedding planner, and she ended up being a scam artist.
Yeah, on multiple levels. That's a whole nother story. Let's talk about it next week.
Okay, I can update you on that. Anyway, my suck for the week, to be honest, I almost want to say I don't have a suck this week because in comparison to the last couple of weeks, it's been a really, really great week. And like there's a lot at the moment that we're working through as a family, but I think overarchingly the last week was a much better week than what it has been.
That's good.
So look, I'm not going to say a suck because it feels really insignificant to all the big things that have been happening. But I have a sweet for the week, and that is that on Saturday, my mum hasn't really been up to Sydney in a long time because she's been caring for Neil and she's been down in Wollongong, and every time we've had to see mum, we've had to travel down there, and we've been spending heaps of time in Wollongong. But Saturday, mum came up. She spent some time in Sydney. We went to the farmers markets. We did cute things with the kids. We've organised to go on a P&O cruise together. Like, we're doing stuff. We're doing stuff as a family, and also like to keep mum sort of like, you know, busy and
Her mind off it.
yeah, as much as possible. So that was we had a really nice day. And then obviously we had the City to Surf on the Sunday, which was just great. I just feel like it's been a really great little family weekend and family week. That was my highlights. And I
love that.
Yeah, I feel like my cup is full.
Aww.
My cup is full.
What was that?
I don't know. I was like, that's a L. My cup is full.
Well, that's it from us, guys. That was a nice finisher, Laura. Thank you.
You are so welcome, my love.
Guys, tell your mum, tell your dad, tell your dog, tell your friends, and share the love because
we love love.